In the midnight glow where the stars align, we lose ourselves in the rhythm divine. Underneath the sky painted with dreams we're chasing.
Hello and welcome to episode 24. I'm Mari,
And I'm Jody.
and today we are doing a deep dive on the planet Pluto. We've been kind of going episode by episode through the outer planets, and today, as we look at Pluto, the phrase deep dive really applies because that is where Pluto goes. Deep, deep underneath into the shadow, into what is unseen, in order to transform that which is hidden and in darkness. So, I actually wanted to start this episode out with a letter from Pluto to each of you to sort of explain from Pluto's perspective who he is and what his role is in all of our lives. So, a letter from Pluto. Do not mistake me for destruction. I am revelation. I do not come to take things from you. I come to reveal what is true underneath all that you are never meant to carry. I am the undercurrent, the force that runs deep beneath the surface. I live in the places you avoid, the truths you suppress, the emotions you bury. I am not interested in who you pretend to be. I am only interested in what is real. I am the part of existence that cannot be lied to. You will feel me as pressure, as intensity, as something in your life that will not resolve until you face it. I will not rush you, but I will not leave. I stay until the truth is uncovered. You may experience me as loss because you are attached. You may experience me as fear because you are holding on. You may experience me as destruction because you built something that cannot survive your evolution. You call me dark because I take you into places you were taught to fear. Your anger, your grief, your desire, your power. But these are not your enemies. They are your teachers. And I will take you there not to harm you, but to return you to yourself. If you numb, I deepen the feeling. If you avoid, I bring it closer. If you deny, I make it undeniable. I'm asking you to stop running. Turn and face what you have been avoiding. I wish for you to choose transformation over comfort. When you meet me here, I hold a gift for you in the darkness. It is a returning of your true power. Not the kind that dominates, but rather that which is unshakable. The power that comes from knowing who you are after everything false has been stripped away. I give you resilience. I give you depth. I give you truth that cannot be taken from you. I take you back home to yourself. Are you ready and willing to meet me there? Signed from the deepest depths of love and truth, Pluto.
Love that.
Yeah, I just thought in order to really understand the archetype of Pluto in a real way, that Pluto speaking in his own voice would be a great way to start off.
Yes.
So, but do you want to lead us more into some keywords in the archetype of Pluto from your perspective, Jody?
Yes. So I tend to look a little bit at everything when it comes to each of the planets. So, like from a psychological astrology perspective, spiritual, evolutionary. So I kind of put together a bit of each of those. So, for psychological function, Pluto represents the unconscious mind, survival instincts, deep emotional drives, and a relationship to power and control. On a more spiritual function, it guides the soul through cycles of death and rebirth, encouraging release of old identities so that new ones can emerge. So I think it gets looked at like death, but really it's death and rebirth together. And then the evolutionary role, Pluto removes what is no longer aligned with our growth. So it is here to help us. I think it gets a bad rap, like, ooh, be afraid. It's Pluto.
Definitely.
And then from a nervous system signature, intense activation followed by profound release. So it does come in and activate us, but when we learn from it and we evolve, then there's a big release. So Pluto transforms what we cling to and what we truly are. And the energetic qualities of it are deep, magnetic, and subterranean.
Yes, definitely agree with all of that. And like you said, and I know that we've talked about this before on the podcast, but I will continue to repeat it. All of the planets are ultimately here to serve you because you asked them to when you signed up to come into this life. Even the ones who teach in ways that may be uncomfortable, they are still here to serve you and to help you evolve ultimately. And sometimes we need that push, we need that pressure, we need a little bit of the uncomfortable in order to evolve. And so treating each of the planets or seeing each of the planets through that lens can be really helpful to soften and to get curious around what they are trying to teach you instead of in that resistance of, oh, this is uncomfortable and I don't like this, right? Get curious around, what is this showing me? How is this here to help me? What am I meant to learn through this? Which can be hard to do when you're going through something tough. But if you can zoom out and hold that perspective, it helps so much through Pluto transits or even working with your natal.
And I was going to just share that one way to look at it, if you're looking at each of the planets, just to give you a perspective. Mars is a planet that pushes us forward. Saturn helps us build structure. And then Pluto pulls us inward, really to do that inner work below the surface in the hidden layers of our emotions and do that true internal work.
Yeah, that's such a good point. It really is solo
Right.
work too, right? Because it is so internal. It is work that no one can do for you. You really do have to face Pluto things internally. I shouldn't say entirely on your own. Support
Right.
therapy, there's many ways, but you have to make the choice. And it is inward, it is internal, and it is under the surface, like you said.
And awareness is key. So once you know, and which again is the great thing about astrology, it gives you that little key to knowing, okay, this is my Pluto. What can I do to work on this? Which we're going to go through.
It does. I mean, there's so much about astrology that feels like keys to unlocking little areas that you had an idea about, but didn't have clarity around. Yes. Okay. So I get the fun job of looking at the shadow side of Pluto. And then Jody is going to give you the gifts. So, what is some of the shadow of Pluto? This is kind of where Pluto gets its reputation. So, a Pluto transit, specifically, we're talking about transits or anywhere that Pluto is active in your life. It's always active in our lives in some way, shape, or form through transit and natally. But that can feel like loss, endings, power struggles, obsession, emotional intensity, fear of letting go, the feeling of I don't recognize myself anymore, and foundations crumbling around you. Because Pluto governs attachment, control, survival patterns, trauma imprints, and unconscious coping strategies, like we talked about. So the shadow expressions end up being things around control, manipulation, fixation, jealousy, possessiveness, toxic dynamics, fear of surrender, all of those types of things. So it's very good to hold in our awareness the shadow expressions where we might find ourselves leaning towards if we're not aware and working consciously with Pluto.
And then the gift of Pluto, ultimately, when we integrate Pluto's energy, it brings that emotional courage, the psychological insight, and also the ability for us to heal deeply. Maturity looks like owning your own shadow rather than projecting it on others. It gives individuals resilience and the strength to rebuild after a loss. Collectively, it drives evolution and also social transformation. Pluto is not here to punish, it's here to help us transform.
Definitely. And we are going to dive into looking at Pluto from a natal perspective. So, in your birth chart first. And then we're going to finish up the episode looking at where Pluto is now by transit and what that might be bringing up for you in your life currently. So, from the natal perspective, from the birth chart, where Pluto is where you hold deep power, where transformation is inevitable, where intensity lives, and where you cannot stay surface level. And We're going to look at briefly at Pluto through the signs, although not all of them. And that is because Pluto is the furthest out planet that we know of. It is the slowest moving. And so it stays in a sign for very long periods of time, anywhere from, I think it's 12 to 30 years, because of its sort of oval ecliptic, longer in some signs than others. So we're going to start with the generation of Pluto in Leo, because that would be anybody who is 89 years is the oldest. So I apologize if you're listening and if you're over 89, we're not touching on Pluto and Cancer, but we figured that would probably be far enough back to go. But each Pluto generation carries a collective assignment, kind of a shared underworld journey. And it's about what that generation is here to expose, transform, and ultimately evolve for humanity itself. And because Pluto moves slowly and there are retrogrades, this is something to remember. There's always a 1 to 2 year overlap where he bounces back and forth between two signs. So if you find your birth date is at the beginning or end of the dates that I'm about to list, check your own birth chart as to where Pluto is for you. You might be in one of those retrograde periods. But also, if you are someone who's born on the cusp between two signs in those beginning or end years, you may feel the themes of both generations. So just something to keep in mind. So Pluto was in Leo from 1937 to 1957, and that is about reclaiming authentic self-expression, transformation through self-expression. The shadow of this generation. Oh, and I was going to say this too, before I continue, because I'm talking about generations. I find it fascinating that the generations we've sort of started labeling, I think it was in the 20s, I want to say, 1920s, when we started labeling generations, Gen Alpha, Gen Z, Millennials, all those, we kind of have these labels now. It is fascinating to me how close the dates for those relate to Pluto in the signs, because the generations are not all the same length, much like Pluto transits are not all the same length through each sign. And the way it lines up is uncanny, but also doesn't really surprise me because I know the power of astrology and these undercurrents run through even if we're not aware of them. So I highly doubt that whoever came up with the concept of generations knew to apply Pluto through the signs, but there it is. And basically, they create these generations based on kind of similar lived experiences within a certain period of time. And that's why the dates flex. And Pluto has a big part to play in all of that. So I just wanted to mention that. So Pluto and Leo, the shadow of that expression could be ego power struggles, needing validation, and performative identity. The gifts are authentic creative power and heart-led leadership. So as a generation, the Pluto and Leo role is to transform what it means to be seen, to move from ego-driven expression to true soul-centered creativity, and to teach the world that being yourself is the power.
Next, we have Pluto in Virgo, which is approximately 1957 to 1972. So this generation purifies and heals the systems of life. There's transformation through service and refinement. The shadow would be perfectionism, control, and hypercriticism. The gift is healing mastery and sacred service. And the generational role is to expose dysfunction in health, work, and daily systems, to restore integrity through intentional embodied healing practices, to remind us that devotion lives in the details.
That generation is so much in service and has really tried to heal, I think, in many ways.
Yeah.
Some of the possible selfishness, honestly, of the Leo generation. I think each generation is sort of a reaction to the generation previous, And we say that about the signs too. But the Pluto and Virgo generation has done a lot to try to help and heal.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So then we are looking at Pluto in Libra, and that is from 1971 to 1984. And the key here is to redefine relationship and fairness, transformation through relationships. The shadow might be codependency, avoidance of conflict, power imbalances. The gift is conscious partnership and relational awareness. And as a generation, the Pluto in Libra generation is here to confront inequality and imbalance in relationships, to transform love from performance into authentic connection, and to teach the world how to relate with truth, not illusion.
Yes, that's my generation right there.
Yes, harmony, the harmony
Yes.
bringers.
Right.
Let's communicate, right?
All right, next we have Pluto in Scorpio, which is approximately 1983 to 1995. So this generation is to descend, reveal, and rebirth. This generation is transformation through depth and intensity. So the shadow side would be obsession, control, and emotional extremes. The gift is profound transformation and psychological truth, which is rebirth. The generational role is to bring the hidden into the light, trauma, taboo power, to normalize shadow work and emotional depth, and to show humanity that healing requires honesty.
That is my generation. Yes, a lot of intensity. Those are the
Right.
millennials, basically. And a lot of that generation has been the ones to say, hey, you're not
Mm-hmm.
seeing what's happening underneath. Like there's a lot that we just played nice and just covered over, and it needs to be looked at for sure. Obviously, Pluto rules Scorpio. So it is the most Plutonian of the signs for
Yes.
it to be in, for sure. Okay, Pluto in Sagittarius, approximately 1995 to 2008. Their theme would be seek truth beyond dogma, transformation through belief. So the shadow here could be ideological dominance, righteousness, or my truth is the truth with a capital T. That sort of I know and you don't kind of attitude. But the gift is real wisdom, expansion, and truth seeking. And as a generation, Pluto in Sagittarius is here to challenge rigid belief systems and inherited truths, to expand consciousness through exploration, philosophy, and perspective, and to remind us that truth is lived, not imposed.
Yes. Every one of my children is Pluto and Sagittarius.
Mm.
Next, we have Pluto in Capricorn, which is from 2008 to 2024. So, this is a lot of the new little ones coming in. This generation is here to dismantle and rebuild the structures, transformation through systems and authority. The shadow can be control, hierarchy, exploitation, rigid power structures. The gift is integrity, responsibility, and sustainable leadership. The generational role is to expose cracks in institutions like government, business, and authority, to dismantle which is no longer aligned, and to rebuild systems rooted in truth, accountability, and long-term stability.
Yeah, I really see this generation as they grow to be the ones to face down the government systems and say,
Right.
this isn't working. We're not putting up with this, and we will tear it all down and rebuild it if
Right.
we have to. If they're aligned from the
Yeah.
evolved state, right? And not just rebelling or pushing back just for the sake of it, but really sitting in that knowing of what is right and what is wrong and saying,
Right.
this ain't it, right? So I look forward to watching that generation to see, because they've got a lot of power
Mhm.
with Pluto and Capricorn. So, okay, Pluto in Aquarius. This is where we are right now. So the babies that are being born today are going to have their Pluto in Aquarius. So approximate dates here would be 2023 to 2044. And the phrase for Pluto in Aquarius is evolve the collective. Transformation comes through community and the future. The shadow here could be detachment, dehumanization, ideological extremism, but the gift is innovation, collective awakening, and future vision. So, as a generation, the role of Pluto in Aquarius is to transform how we connect as human collective. The whole web of life, all of us together, how are we all connected, and really wake people up to that. And to confront the shadow of technology, power, and groupthink, and to midwife a more conscious, equitable, and awakened society. So these are our little kids coming to the present to tell us the direction that we need to head as a collective in order to come together, really.
Right. And then once that generation has children, probably, then their children are going to have their Pluto and Pisces, which is going to be between 2043 and 2067. And this is the generation of returning to unity, transformation through surrender and spirituality. The shadow side of this is escapism, illusion, and spiritual bypassing. The gift is compassion, transcendence, and divine connection. The role of this generation is to dissolve the illusion of separation and to reconnect humanity with the sacred, and to guide us into oneness, compassion, and spiritual truth. Gosh, it makes me just want to jump ahead to 2043.
Oh, I know. The more beautiful world our hearts know is possible is the line that comes to my mind when I think about that. Absolutely. Yeah, it's coming. And a big change is coming too with Pluto and Aquarius. And we're going to dig more into that in a little bit. But first, I wanted to go into Pluto through the houses, because your Pluto sign, the sign doesn't just describe your personal transformation. It reveals the deeper work your soul came to do with your generation, like we just talked about. But the house it's in, that is specific to you. And that's where it gets personal. I went pretty deep with this, as I want to do. So look up your charts, and wherever you have Pluto, what house it's in. These are the themes and archetypes. So if you have Pluto in the first house, Pluto in the first house lives right at the surface of who you are. You radiate intensity, depth, and truth, whether you mean to or not. You're someone who instinctively sees beneath the surface, senses what's really going on. And you can't easily pretend everything is fine when it's not. The wound, which we talk about with Pluto, is often early in life. The Pluto wound often happens early in life. So you likely learned that your depth or your truth made other people uncomfortable. So you may have held yourself back, become more guarded, or felt like you were too much. And this can go two ways, the reaction to this. Either you suppress your truth because of that, or you express it in ways that feel too intense or poorly timed. You're just sort of leaning into it for shock value. And often people project onto you, calling you too intense, when really you're just seeing what they don't see. You're seeing through, seeing underneath the surface of things. And your gift here is you are born with the ability to face hard truths, act decisively, and cut through illusion. At your best, you become someone who brings truth into the room in a way that actually transforms people. That is a gift. So your path is learning not to dim your intensity, but to express it consciously. That means doing your inner work and learning how to share truth in a way that connects, not wounds. Pluto, if it's not in its evolved expression, can be harsh and wounding and sharp, right? So with Pluto in the first house, your power lies in your ability to face truth, and your growth is in learning how to express that truth in a way that transforms rather than overwhelms. If you have Pluto in the second house, this is going to be about self-worth, survival, and inner security. This placement asks, do you truly believe you can survive and support yourself? So early in your life, there's often a deep imprint that the world is unsafe and resources could disappear. This can come from fear in the family environment, instability, betrayal, or survival stress, or subtle messaging that you're not enough. So self-worth becomes fragile, or something you feel you have to prove. You don't feel like you are enough just as you are. And this can create a core distortion in you that I'm not equipped, I'm not enough, I need more security before I can live. So you may overvalue money or external security, play it safe and avoid risk, or underestimate your own ability to handle life. And often, money becomes a substitute for inner security. But the gift that you are here to develop is unshakable self-trust, not because life is safe, but because you learn that you can handle what life brings. At your best, you become the epitome of resilience. You are incredibly resourceful and deeply self-reliant. The path for you, however, requires a Pluto-style initiation. You have to prove to yourself that you can survive, and that often means taking risks, leaving what feels secure and facing fears around survival head on. You really have to step directly into what it is that you fear in order to embrace the gifts for you here. Because your confidence is forged through experience, not safety. This Pluto placement requires that you step outside of your comfort zone. With Pluto in the second house, your evolution comes from realizing that true security isn't something you build outside of yourself, it's something you discover within yourself through facing whatever you fear you can't survive. And then Pluto in the third house, at its core, is about perception, truth, and communication. Your mind doesn't skim the surface. It goes straight to what is hidden, unspoken, or denied by others. You're seeing right underneath what's being said to what is actually the truth. But early in life, there's often a moment where you saw something or saw through something to what was real. And when you spoke up, you weren't believed or you were shut down for saying it. So you learned it's not always safe to speak the truth, or your voice might create discomfort in others or even conflict. So this can create a distortion in perception. You can become hyper-focused on what's dark, hidden, or wrong in others and the world around you. And this can show up as suspicion or mistrust, harsh, sharp, or cutting communication, or feeling misunderstood no matter how you speak. This placement usually goes one of two ways. Either you shut down and silence yourself, or you say things in a way that hits a little too hard. But the gift here is that you were born to be a truth teller. You can see through illusion far faster than most and name what others avoid. At your best, you wake people up. You challenge false narratives and bring powerful insight into the world. Your healing path is deeply tied to using your voice. You must learn to put what you perceive into words. That might look like honest conversations, journaling or storytelling, speaking your truth with a trusted friend, family member, or therapist, or sharing your truth and perspectives, but with compassion in a way people can receive. But ultimately, you must talk about things. You have to get it out somehow. That is the way that you process all of these things that you're seeing and these deep underlying things. So with Pluto in the third house, your evolution comes from trusting your perception and reclaiming your voice, learning to speak truth in a way that awakens others without isolating yourself or pushing people away. Your true gift is seeing through the illusions in life that many cannot. And if you have Pluto in the fourth house, at its core, this is about home, roots, and emotional foundations. This is the deepest layer of the psyche, where your sense of safety and belonging is formed. So early in life for you, this often carries an imprint or a sense that home wasn't fully safe, stable, or emotionally secure. And this can come from instability, absence, or intensity in the family, and emotional undercurrents, or feeling like you had to grow up just too fast. So deep down, you may carry a sense of being alone, even when surrounded by others. And this can lead to protecting yourself through emotional self-sufficiency. So you might keep people at a distance, struggle to fully open up, right? You're guarded, or feel like no one truly understands you. And often there's a hidden belief that if people really saw me, they wouldn't stay, which is such a deeply heartbreaking wound. And it's really an inner child wound around trusting that you're safe in the world and with others. But your gift is you have profound emotional depth and insight. You understand the inner world, pain, healing, and what it really means to belong. At your best, you become a space holder for others, someone who can create real emotional safety, and someone who helps rebuild what home truly means. A healed and integrated Pluto in the fourth is an incredible gift to the people around them. You provide that real sense of safety for others that maybe you felt that you didn't have growing up. Ultimately, your path is about reclaiming connection, learning that you don't have to do life alone. This means allowing yourself to be seen, finding or creating your people, your tribe, your group, and redefining home as something that you consciously build for yourself. With Pluto in the fourth, your evolution comes from healing your roots and learning to trust connection again. Discovering that true belonging is something you are allowed to create, not something you are destined to lose. If you have Pluto in the fifth house, at its core, this is about creative self-expression, joy, and the inner child, but turned all the way up in intensity. So this is the part of you that wants to be seen, be expressed, feel alive, and create something that matters. Early in life, something likely happened to you around your natural self-expression not feeling safe or welcome. This could have looked like being shamed for being too much, having your joy, creativity, or uniqueness suppressed, being forced to fit the mold, whatever that may have looked like, or feeling like your authentic expression made others uncomfortable in some way. And what this taught your inner child was, it's not safe to fully be me. And this can create a split, and it tends to go one of two ways. Overexpression, which can show up as drama, intensity, attention seeking, addictive pleasure patterns, chasing highs, validation, or being seen at any cost. You have to be seen no matter what it takes. Or the suppression, which is holding back your creativity, fear of being seen or judged, becoming overly controlled, serious, or disconnected from your joy. And at the root of both of these, though, is a wounded inner child who was told no or not like that a few too many times. But your gift is that you are a powerful channel of creative emotional truth, not just art in the traditional sense, but your life itself being a walking embodiment of storytelling, performance, self-expression, vulnerability that moves people. At your highest, you give form to the unseen, especially the darker, deeper parts of life, in a way that helps others feel, heal, and understand more about themselves and the world. So your path is about reclaiming your right to joy, to play, and authentic expression. And this means letting yourself be seen, allowing your creativity to be messy, raw, and real, radical authenticity, and reconnecting with your inner child's spontaneity, playfulness, and joy. And most importantly, learning to trust that your expression is not too much. It's your medicine and your gift. So with Pluto in the 5th house, your evolution comes from reclaiming your creative fire, transforming wounds around being seen into a powerful, authentic expression that brings life, truth, and depth into the world. You are not just here to create, you are here to become the art. Pluto in the 6th house is about work, service, skill, and the path of becoming truly competent and useful. This is where life asks, what are you devoted to? What are you willing to practice, refine, and humble yourself to learn? How do you show up in service, not in theory, but in reality? With Pluto in the 6th, your early experiences in life often distort your relationship to responsibility, work, and self-worth. And this can look like a lack of guidance or mentorship, being overburdened or having to carry too much from a young age, or being shamed around your performance, your competence, or doing things right. So internally, you may feel either not good enough or like you have to prove your worth constantly. And this can split into two extremes. Either taking on too little responsibility, which can look like avoidance, underachievement, difficulty following through, feeling overwhelmed or incapable, or taking on too much responsibility, overwork, burnout, perfectionism, feeling like nothing you do is ever enough. But at the core of both of those expressions is a distorted relationship to effort, worth, and usefulness. But your gift, though, is that you are here to become a master of meaningful work and transformative service. Not surface level helping, but going into the hard places, addressing real pain, telling uncomfortable truths, and improving systems, people, or lives at a deep level. At your highest, you don't just help, you transform. When Pluto in the 6th acts from a healed and aligned place, they are such an incredible gift to the world. When they show up in service to others, they change lives. So your path is about finding right relationship with responsibility. And this means learning balance between effort and rest. You have to take care of yourself. Developing real skill and discipline and dedication. Allowing yourself to be taught. This is a big one because this one also has a tendency towards stubbornness and thinking that they have it figured out, they have it right. So be teachable. And maybe most importantly, finding a trusted mentor or mentors for yourself. And then the real gift is when you eventually become one for others. So with Pluto in the 6th, your evolution comes from transforming your relationship to work and worth. Learning to serve with depth, integrity, and power without losing yourself in the process. This is the house where you learn that devotion is not punishment. For you, it's initiation. If you have Pluto in the 7th house, This is about intimacy, trust, and the transformative power of relationship. Not just romance, but any connection that changes you at a soul level. This is the house of, I meet you and I'm never the same. So at the root, likely early in life, something or someone damaged your ability to trust. This may have looked like betrayal, lies or half-truths, silence where truth should have been spoken, or emotional environments where things felt off but were never named. So internally, you learned that closeness is dangerous or unreliable. This often creates three main survival strategies. One, isolation, avoiding vulnerability, emotional shutdown, keeping people at arm's length. Two, shallow connection, relationships that look good but lack depth, avoiding real emotional exposure, playing the part without true intimacy. You got your walls up, you're just playing it safe. Or three, endless drama. And this is attracting intense, chaotic, or wounded partners, cycles of heartbreak or instability, unconsciously choosing friendships that reinforce your inner wounds. There is really something to the wounded expression of Pluto and also the sign of Scorpio that seeks drama just for the sake of feeling intensity. Sometimes that can show up here, right? At the core of all three of these, though, is the fact that trust is not allowed to fully form. They all come down to a trust issue in relationship. So your gift, though, here is that you are here to learn real intimacy, the kind built on truth, vulnerability, and trust. Not fantasy, not chemistry, and not surface level connection, but two whole humans meeting in honesty, shadows and all. Your relationships are meant to initiate you, expose you, crack you open to real vulnerability, and ultimately transform you. Your healing path is simple, but not easy. Find someone trustworthy and choose to trust. And this requires discernment because not everyone earns access to your full trust. You must be very discerning about who you choose to give your trust to because you can't stay defended or your walls up. You have to let that guard down, and that's hard for you. And a willingness to be fully seen. And most importantly, you cannot do this work alone. Your work is relational at its core. It must be done with the other, right? With another human being. So an added little tidbit for you here, Pluto in the 7th about relationships. You will often attract Plutonian people, intense, truth-telling, and catalytic. They can be real catalysts in your life for this transformation. These people ask hard questions, bring up taboo or uncomfortable truths, push your boundaries around what you find comfortable, and act as initiators into deeper intimacy. So ultimately, you're sort of attracting that which you fear the most in a way, right? Because remember, the 7th house is like a mirror. People that come into your life in a partnership in some way that mirror back to you things about yourself. So ultimately, those people are here to wake that up inside of you. So with Pluto in the 7th house, your evolution comes through relationship, learning that true intimacy requires trust, truth, and the courage to be fully seen. Intimacy is not sharing your best self, it's sharing your whole self. Pluto in the 7th doesn't want a perfect love story, it wants a true one. Warts and all. So become willing to crack yourself open and show yourself truly. Okay, if you have Pluto in the 8th house, this is Pluto's natural home, the 8th house. So it adds to the intensity of Pluto. Very Plutonian topics come up in the 8th house. Intimacy, transformation, and confronting the deepest realities of life. This is the realm of sex, death, loss, power, and the unconscious or hidden realms, all Plutonian topics. In other words, everything intense, taboo, and emotionally raw, which sounds like Pluto. So at the root or early in life, you likely saw or felt the darkness of life, but too early, too alone, or too intensely. This placement can be really hard, I think, especially when you're young. It can be scary sometimes. This may have looked like exposure to trauma, loss, or emotional extremes, sensing or witnessing unspoken pain, fear, or dysfunction in your environment, perceiving truths others denied or couldn't face. So internally, you likely became deeply attuned to what is hidden, but without the support in how to hold it, how to deal with it, how to process it. So with Pluto in the 8th, your gift of penetrating sight can also become your distortion, which is an overfocus on the dark, intense, or painful layers of life. And this can look like brooding, emotional heaviness, fear, guardedness, or mistrust, being magnetized to crisis, intensity, or chaos, difficulty relaxing into lighter, safer experiences. At its core, you may feel that life is dangerous and that you must always stay vigilant. But the gift here is that this placement is where Pluto is strongest. So you are here to become someone who can sit with the deepest human experiences and not turn away. You have emotional courage, psychological insight, and the ability to hold space for grief, fear, and transformation. At your highest, you become a guide through the darkness, a healer, a truth seer, a soul midwife, a transformation doula. You hold all of those archetypes within you. So your healing work is actually twofold. You must learn to receive deep intimacy and to give it. This means letting someone truly see you, allowing yourself to be affected by love, risking vulnerability even when it feels dangerous. Because the paradox for you is you cannot witness another soul without letting them witness yours. So this one's wounds and work is very similar to the seventh, with its own little bit of nuance, but it's very similar because there's definitely an intimacy component in the eighth house as well. So the truth is you are wired for realness, depth, and emotional truth. You thrive when life gets raw and honest. People drop the masks and show you their truth. And when something meaningful is at stake. And often you come alive in a crisis and help others survive it. The trick is meeting people with your own vulnerability as well. Let your guard down, let your walls down. With Pluto in the eighth house, your evolution comes through facing life's deepest truths and learning to transform pain, intimacy, and darkness into power, connection, and healing. The darkness is not your enemy, it's your initiation. You embody the phoenix, and you were born with a capacity to be the one people turn to when life gets real. If you have Pluto in the ninth house, this is about the search for truth, meaning, and belief taken to the deepest level. This is the realm of philosophy, religion, worldview, truth-seeking, long journeys, both inner and outer, right? Internal journeys, or actually journeying physically somewhere. But at the root or early in life, you likely experienced disillusionment around belief systems. And this may have looked like hypocrisy in religion, teachers, or authority, being taught truths that didn't hold up, or realizing that people claiming certainty were actually wrong. So internally, you learned that belief can be dangerous, misleading, or manipulative. The response to this can go in a few directions. Cynicism, basically nothing is true. Fanaticism, clinging to a new belief with intensity. Spiritual superiority, needing to be right about the truth. Or distrust of all teachers and all systems. At its core, you may reject meaning itself or become rigid in defining what meaning is. But the gift that you carry is actually something quite rare. You are a truth detector. You have the uncanny ability to see through false teachings, question assumptions others blindly accept, and expose where ego corrupts belief systems, where the human gets involved, right? The ego part of ourselves gets involved with belief systems. At your highest, you become a voice of authentic truth, not borrowed or inherited truth, but lived truth. Your path requires two key initiations. Leave your known world. You must step outside the belief system you were raised in. This can come in the form of travel, education, spiritual exploration, exposure to radically different perspectives and cultures. For you, distance creates clarity. And two, build your own philosophy, not from rebellion, but from tested, lived experience. A healthy Pluto in the ninth belief system welcomes questioning. It's not afraid of doubt. It includes shadow, complexity, and paradox. That's a big one. And it evolves over time. It doesn't dig in its heels. It is welcoming of all of those things. A key thing for you to remember is that doubt is not the enemy of faith, but instead it refines and distills it into a more potent truth. With Pluto in the ninth house, you were never meant to blindly believe. You are meant to seek, question, and transform truth itself. Your evolution comes through dismantling inherited beliefs and forging truth that is tested, lived, and unshakably your own. You are meant to become someone others look to for wisdom when they are asking the biggest questions of life. If you have Pluto in the 10th house, at its core, this is about power, purpose, and your impact in the world. This is the realm of career, reputation, leadership, legacy, and your cosmic job description. But with Pluto here, your work is not just a job, it is a calling. So from a young age, you likely felt called to something big, but were probably not fully supported in it. This may have looked like authority figures who were limiting, controlling, or disempowering, pressure to succeed in narrow or conventional ways, early messages that the world is harsh, competitive, or unsafe, and being shot down when you dream too big. So internally, you may carry both ambition, right? This feeling of I'm meant for more, and also the fear of stepping into your full power. So this can distort into fear of visibility or success, staying small or choosing safe paths, cynicism about power or leadership, or the opposite, over controlling, being forceful, or having power-driven behavior to sort of overcompensate. But at its core, you may either avoid power or misuse it. But the gift here is that this is one of Pluto's most potent placements for impact in the world. You are here to bring truth into the public sphere. You have natural leadership intensity, the ability to influence many people, a drive to do meaningful, impactful work. At your highest, you become someone who changes systems, structures, or collective direction, not quietly in the background, but publicly. A healed and embodied Pluto in the 10th is a force for change, evolution, and transformation in the world. But your healing work requires a great big leap. You must claim your destiny. No one can do it for you. You have to take that step and chase that feeling that is driving you, that sense of, I have something important to do, that important work. You have to claim it. So that means choosing work that actually matters to you, leaving paths that feel empty, performative, or misaligned, and taking bold, sometimes risky steps towards your calling. Because half measures won't work here. Pluto wants you to go all in and put yourself out there. So your challenge is that you may see the world as dangerous, harsh, or full of landmines. And while those fears may not be entirely unfounded, they cannot be allowed to trump that knowing in your gut that you are meant for more and stop you from stepping forward. The truth is, with Pluto at your back, your power to navigate the world is greater than your fear of it. Pluto in the 10th doesn't ask what you do for a living, aka to make money. It asks what you're willing to stand for in public. Your evolution comes through claiming your power, stepping into your calling, and using your voice or work to transform the world around you. You are meant to be a force in this world, and something larger than you meets you when you say yes to that. If you have Pluto in the 11th house, at its core, this is about groups, communities, networks, shared goals, and collective movements. So some people also place friendship in the 11th house, but this isn't friendship in the classic sense. It's more like, who are you aligned with and what are you building together? Right? So with Pluto here, groups become a place of power, truth, and shadow. So at the root, and often from a very young age, you've seen the dark side of groups and group dynamics. This may have looked like betrayal, exclusion, or being the outsider, groupthink, manipulation, or mob mentality, or cult behavior, being scapegoated or targeted, and witnessing how people lose their individuality in a crowd. So deep down, you have an innate distrust of groups, even if you long for belonging. And this can create two main patterns: either withdrawal, which is staying independent, detached, or self-sufficient, avoiding groups, basically, to stay safe, or silence, seeing what's wrong but not speaking up, choosing comfort or belonging over truth. At its core, you may fear what happens when you challenge the group. But what's interesting, though, is that exactly what you fear within groups or communities is the very thing you are meant to awaken and transform within them. You are here to see through collective illusion, and you can detect dysfunction in groups instantly, understand group psychology deeply, sense when something is off beneath the surface, and more importantly, you are here to name it. You are not always the obvious leader, But you are the truth teller inside the group, the one who calls out what others avoid, exposes hidden dynamics, and helps groups evolve instead of self-destruct. So your Pluto purpose involves working with groups, communities, or collective movements, but not passively. You are here to challenge group dynamics, bring honesty into collective spaces, and help transform how people work together, which this can show up as a community builder, a mediator, activist, therapist, or facilitator, or someone who shapes culture or movements in some way. But the hard truth of this placement, though, is if we are to learn anything from history, truth tellers get punished. So your nervous system might say, stay quiet, don't rock the boat, just fit in. But your soul says, say it anyway. Your healing path is finding the right groups and committing to them. Not all groups deserve your energy, but the right ones, they need you. And when you find them, speak, engage, stay, and help shape the culture. Pluto in the 11th isn't asking about who your friends are. It's asking what you're willing to stand for when the group gets it wrong. Your power lies in seeing through collective illusion and having the courage to speak truth within the group. Pluto is urging you to say what others are afraid to say, even if it costs you your place in the room. And finally, last but not least, if you have Pluto in the 12th house. The 12th house themes are around the unconscious, spirituality, compassion, transcendence, and the unseen and hidden realms. So with Pluto here, you are deeply attuned to suffering, both your own and the world's, not just intellectually, but viscerally, energetically, and sometimes physically. Since a young age, you have likely felt everything, literally everything, which can easily lead to feeling overwhelmed by pain, yours, those you are closest to, or the entire world. You feel all of it. And this can look like absorbing others' emotions so deeply you don't know what is yours and what isn't, early exposure to grief, loss, or emotional intensity, and feeling the weight of life in a way others around you don't seem to. Because when you were young, this all felt like it was just too much, you likely had to shut down, at least partially. Many people with this placement try to shut that part off because it's overwhelming, right? So this overwhelm and subsequent shutdown can create patterns like emotional numbing, avoidance of pain, either yours or others, cynicism or nihilism, dark humor as a coping mechanism, gallows humor. I've been guilty of that. I've got a few 12th house placements, not Pluto, but I've got a few. Withdrawing from compassion because it hurts too much. At its core, you may actually be resistant to feeling because feeling for you is overwhelming. It's not just a little, it's a lot, right? But this placement holds something incredibly rare and truly beautiful. You are here to develop true embodied compassion, not surface level empathy, not performative care, but the ability to sit with suffering without turning away, to sit with suffering without closing off your heart. And this is one of the most spiritual callings that I believe, this is my personal belief, this is one of the most spiritual callings in astrology. Your presence itself can become healing. You are here to open your heart to pain without collapsing, hold space for other suffering, embody compassion in a way people feel. Your destiny is to be a reminder of the power of being met with unconditional love in the darkest hour. So, what a gift you are to the world when you face that and embody that. But here's the paradox. Compassion hurts, right? To feel deeply, you must let others' pain touch you. You must stay open when everything in you wants to close. And the challenge is when everything inside of you is saying, numb it out, move on, don't feel it, shut it out. You have to stay anyway. Your healing is not about doing more. This isn't a performative or necessarily work related, but it's about reopening your heart consciously. This can look like meditation, prayer, or inner work, visualizing others with compassion, even difficult people, I would say, especially difficult people, allowing yourself to feel without shutting down, because the real work happens internally first for you. Everything external flows from that. It's doing all of that internal work and softening your heart and reopening your heart to all of that feeling. And that flows from you. People feel that in your presence if you are living in that embodied. So Your gift to the world is when your Pluto is embraced and you remain open, you become a healer, a quiet, stabilizing presence, someone people feel safe around, someone who sees others fully and meets them there with empathy, compassion, and love. Pluto in the 12th doesn't ask how you survive suffering. It asks how open your heart remains in the presence of it. Your evolution comes through embodying compassion without losing yourself in it. This placement isn't about being loud or recognized. It's about who you are when no one is watching and how much you can truly live from the heart. Okay, so I know that was probably a lot, but I felt like it was important to go that deep with this because Pluto shows up so strongly in our lives in so many ways. And learning about all of that personally was so impactful for me. But now it is time to transition into where Pluto is now. Let's look at Pluto in Aquarius. What is the new curriculum that Pluto has brought into our lives since 2024, as it was kind of bouncing back and forth between Capricorn and Aquarius, and now officially we are in Aquarius until 2044. So the early degrees, which is where we are right now, of any outer planet transit is when we tend to feel it most intensely because it's a brand new curriculum we haven't yet learned how to navigate. So that can feel especially intense with Pluto because of the nature of Pluto itself shining a light on what has been hidden in the darkness. So he begins with exposure, which means that right now we are seeing the shadow of Aquarius, the distortion of technology, the illusion of connection, the manipulation of information, and tension between individuality and groupthink. What we thought was progress, what we thought was community, Pluto is asking us to look again. This is the disillusionment phase, the moment where the veil lifts, but the meaning hasn't yet landed for us. We're in the questioning moment in society right now. And the deeper question emerging is, who is shaping your thoughts? And are they truly your own? And before I continue, I want to say, if you listen to our episode on Uranus and Uranus moving into Gemini, you're going to hear a lot of similar sort of crossover themes. These two planets are really kind of working in tandem as Uranus moves into Gemini because Uranus rules Aquarius. Now, Pluto is in Aquarius. Both Pluto and Uranus are in air signs, which is about communication, people, that type of thing, right? So you're going to hear some crossover. They're really kind of working in tandem right now. So, because Pluto in Aquarius is not just transforming the world, it's transforming the mind. This transit is initiating us into conscious participation in the collective, asking us to take our power back from systems, from influence, and from unconscious agreement, and then choose with awareness how we engage. And I'm sure as I'm reading some of these things, there's different things that are happening currently in society that are popping into your head. And yeah, I'll just leave it at that. So this is the shift from passive participation to conscious creation. Pluto in Aquarius isn't just changing the future, it's asking who gets to shape it and whether you are participating consciously or unconsciously. So the themes are transformation of systems and power structures, collective awakening, technology and humanity, decentralization, redefinition of community, and power shifting away from centralized authority. I would imagine for many of us sounds exciting, but we got some work to do. The shadow here can be control through technology. Interesting. Groupthink, ideological extremism. We may be noticing some of those things popping up in the culture right now because the shadow tends to be shown first, right? Before we start to embrace the lesson and make the change and transform our world together. The gift of Pluto in Aquarius, however, is collective empowerment, innovation that benefits humanity, and new models of collaboration. So that is the core archetype. And now we are going to do a more brief than the other houses breakdown of the houses by transit. So wherever Pluto currently is in your chart by transit, where's Aquarius, the early degrees of Aquarius? This is possibilities of what you might expect by house. And I'm going to hand it over to Jody to grab the first house.
All right. So the first house is, again, your identity and the self. So, waking up to how your identity has been shaped by external systems and expectations, you're realizing you've been performing a version of yourself. You're going to break free from labels, roles, or identities that aren't truly yours, reclaiming individuality in a world that subtly pressures conformity.
Yep. That is my personal
Ooh.
transit at this moment. Yeah, I'm Capricorn rising, but in Placidus, my first house is quite large and it includes the beginning degrees of Aquarius.
Oh,
So, second house, if you have Pluto transiting your second house in Aquarius, it's around value and security. So, waking up to how your sense of worth has been conditioned. So, you may be questioning money systems, consumerism, and what security really means. You may be letting go of external validation as your source of worth and rebuilding self worth outside of societal definitions of success.
the third house is the mind and perception. So, waking up to how your thoughts have been influenced, noticing patterns in how information is fed to you, breaking out of mental loops, narratives, or programmed thinking, becoming radically intentional with your voice and communication.
And if you have Pluto transiting through your fourth house, home and roots, you are waking up to inherited emotional and familial patterns, seeing how family systems shaped your emotional responses, breaking generational cycles of silence, control, or disconnection, and redefining what home means on your own terms.
And fifth house is the creativity and expression house. So if you have Pluto in Aquarius in your fifth house, you're waking up to where your self expression has been shaped by approval, letting go of needing validation to create or express yourself, reclaiming your authentic voice and creative power, and allowing yourself to be seen as you truly are.
And Pluto transiting your sixth house, the house of work and daily life, this is you waking up to how your labor and energy are being used. You might be questioning your work systems, burnout culture, and productivity expectations, breaking patterns of overworking or undervaluing your time, or creating a daily life that actually supports your well being.
And that's my transit I have right now, Pluto in my sixth house.
Are you feeling that?
Yeah, for sure.
Beautiful. It's doing its work, it's doing its good work.
Okay, seventh house is all about relationships. So if Pluto in Aquarius is transiting your seventh house, waking up to unconscious dynamics in how you relate, seeing patterns of projection, dependency, or control, breaking out of relationship roles you've unconsciously played, and choosing connection from awareness, not conditioning.
And if you have Pluto transiting your eighth house, this is around intimacy and power. So you are waking up to deeper emotional and energetic entanglements, becoming aware of power dynamics in intimacy and shared resources, facing fears around vulnerability, control, and trust, and releasing unconscious attachments and reclaiming your energy.
Ninth house is all about beliefs and truth. So Pluto transiting this house is all about waking up to the systems that shaped your worldview, questioning everything you've been taught to believe, seeing where ideology has replaced truth, and developing your own philosophy through lived experience.
If you have Pluto transiting your 10th house right now, that is career and public role, this is waking up to your role within larger systems, realizing how your career fits into or challenges societal structures, breaking away from paths that don't align with your truth, and stepping into leadership that reflects your authentic voice.
And Pluto transiting the 11th house is all about community and the collective. So, waking up to group dynamics and collective influence, seeing clearly how groups function, including their shadow, reevaluating where you belong and why, and choosing conscious participation in a community, not blind alignment.
Finally, 12th house. If you have Pluto transiting here, this is the unseen and unconscious. So you are waking up to the hidden patterns running beneath your life, becoming aware of unconscious behaviors and emotional undercurrents, seeing how collective energy affects you more than you realized, and learning to consciously disengage from patterns that aren't yours. So, Pluto in Aquarius is asking you to wake up to what has been shaping you from behind the scenes and to consciously choose who you are within it.
Yes. I was just going to say, and a reminder, like working with your Pluto is not a fast process. So if you're looking at it and you're thinking, oh gosh, why hasn't this transformation come yet? Well, it is something that we really need to work through. I'm just saying that it takes work and it takes a few lessons. So if you're still working on it and you're in your 40s or 50s and you're thinking, what the heck? Well, that is okay. It's not like a quick fix. Nothing worth it is a quick fix. So we really need to look at our Pluto and think about how it applies to us and where we've seen it play out. And maybe that awareness can assist you in working on changing the things that need to change within to work through your Pluto.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you so much for bringing that up. Because that is a really important key piece to all of this, to not get impatient with yourself or try to rush it or feel like you're behind. You're not behind. You're not. But having the awareness piece is just going to help you continue on this path that you're already on. You're already doing the work. All of us are in some way, shape, or form, but the awareness just helps us bring it into the forefront and understand it better. But that patience is key too. This is not overnight transformation. Most transformation isn't, right? And particularly with Pluto, because of its slow movement, it's slow in our inner world as well. Okay. And to wrap up this episode, I'm just going to bring in, like I have done for the previous couple of deep dives that we did, just some practical working with this planet for everybody, no matter the sign, no matter the house, or it be through the transit, natal, etc. So, some gentle, practical ways to work with Pluto in your life. Tell the truth, especially to yourself. Where are you avoiding something you already know? You don't have to say it out loud to the world right away, but you do need to be honest with yourself. Even a quiet acknowledgement like, this isn't working anymore, is a powerful start. Release the need to control everything. Pluto often shows us what we can't control, and that can feel scary, but underneath that is an initiation. So trust that something deeper is unfolding. Try softening your grip just a little. Pluto is asking for surrender in the unknown. And I know how difficult that is, but it gets a lot easier when we do. Just let go of that white knuckle grip a little bit. Turn toward what you've been avoiding. You don't have to dive all the way in, but you can take one small step toward the conversation you've been putting off, the feeling you've been numbing, the truth you've been circling. Working with Pluto begins to flow much easier when you show a willingness to face it. Let things end when they're ready to end. This might be a version of yourself, a belief, a path that no longer fits. Endings don't mean failure. They are often the doorway to something more aligned for us. And choose depth over distraction. It's easy to stay busy, numb out, and scroll past what we feel, especially in today's society. Everything is so fast-paced and there's a million distractions. But Pluto invites you to ask, what is actually real for me right now? Not synthetic, not forced in front of me with all of the scrolling and everything, but what's real? What's real for me in the quiet by myself? Reconnect with that. And then finally, let yourself be supported. Pluto work can be deep and sometimes heavy. I would say often heavy. So support here can be so helpful in this work. And that could look like therapy, somatic work, honest conversations with someone you trust, or simply being witnessed in your experience. There's strength in allowing yourself to be held through this work. So Pluto's role here is to guide you back to what is true. And you don't have to walk that path all at once, just one honest step at a time. What you are losing is not your power. It is what was blocking your power. And that's just something to hold on to when you're thinking about Pluto.
I love that. And that's all we have for today. So thank you for joining us, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks for joining us under the stars today. We hope you're leaving feeling inspired, grounded, and more connected to your inner truth.
And if you loved this episode, we would be so grateful if you would subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with someone you love.
If you're ready to explore your soul's path through psychological, evolutionary astrology, and personal astrological coaching, you can find Mari at yoursoulpurposeastrology.com or follow her on Instagram and Facebook at Your Soul Purpose Astrology.
And if you're ready to illuminate your birth chart and explore how essential oils can support your emotional and energetic alignment, you can find Jody at earthandskyessentials.com or at Earth and Sky Essentials on Facebook and Instagram.
And remember, your soul is always guiding you.
The magic starts within.